here, if you miss a meeting, can you or can you not approve?
You actually can. There's actually there's a written Robert's Rules of Order stuff opinion on that. And it says, especially if there's turnover on the body, there's an opportunity to review materials
Ahead of time.
and weighing. So they wouldn't want to require everyone to be there. Otherwise, you might have a body where there's such turnover that no one would be able to vote. So you actually can, but it's perfectly okay. If you don't feel comfortable, it's perfectly okay to abstain.
All right, just want to make that for future reference for anyone that may miss a meeting. If you get the minutes ahead of time, and you have an opportunity to review, you do have the ability to support the motion or abstain. Next item, under new business, consider resolution number 22-12, approving the 2023 North Shore Fire Department fees for service schedule. And that is in your packet, that was provided to us by Chief Whitaker. Tyler, I don't know if you.
Yeah, I'll tee both of these up. So both of these are going to all the North Shore municipalities on the fee schedule. Again, this is something that's typically done annually with the North Shore Fire Department. Probably the fee that's impacted most here is the emergency medical services fee that Chief Whitaker is proposing to increase 4.4%, which is along the CPI factor that he researched. So by approving this resolution, this would go into effect for 2023.
Any questions or comments? Trustee Booker?
Yes, so all the municipalities will get, is that the same amount for each municipality, or is it vary?
As far as the emergency medical services fee, I believe that's the same.
And has there been a situation where a municipality did not approve that?
Not that I'm aware of.
It hasn't been since that.
I mean, there might have been some no votes, but I've never heard of a municipality not fully approving. So if you did have one that didn't approve, there would need to be a further discussion with the fire board as far as how they would go about their things.
I'm just curious.
5 out of the 7.
Yeah,
5 out of the 7.
Okay.
Okay.
There's some, right,
Yeah.
there are some that we have to have everyone unanimous, and then there's some that 5 out of 7.
Yeah, but I know there's been no votes in the past, but I don't know if there's been a municipality that actually voted no.
Other questions, Trustee Seegers?
Is 4.4% kind of the average that it normally increases annually?
No. That's all, it's all the math. They try to adjust that based on inflationary costs. So there's a few CPI factors that they use for that computation. So it just came out to 4.4. But there's other years where that's probably a higher increase than normal. Usually it's not that much, but since we're seeing inflation higher than normal in this period, that's a little bit higher of the normal average increase.
Other questions? If not, we do need a motion to approve this resolution. The resolution actually is in our packet. And it says, whereas upon approval by not less than 5 of these 7 municipalities. So is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we pass resolution number 22-12, approving the 2023 North Shore Fire Department fees for service schedule.
It's been moved by Trustee Cork and seconded by Trustee Thompson to approve resolution 22-12, approving the 2023 North Shore Fire Department fees for service schedule. We will need to take a roll call vote because it's a resolution. So Trustee Booker.
Aye.
Trustee Seegers.
Aye.
Trustee Owens. Trustee Thompson.
Aye.
Trustee Quirk.
Aye.
Trustee Johnson. President Montgomery, aye. Unanimous approval of the resolution. The second resolution is 2213, authorizing an exception to the levy limits for charges for the North Shore Fire Department pursuant to 2005 Wisconsin Act 484. And again, that is in your packet and Tyler.
Yeah, once again, this is standard every year. So every year, the treasurer and myself fill out a levy limit worksheet. And one of the exemptions is related to debt. This was something that North Shore Fire, as a consolidated fire service, was able to work in just a few years ago to also have their debt part of that levy limit exemption if we still did so, but it needs to be passed through a resolution in order to do that. So it ends up being a benefit for us. This North Shore Fire and us as staff are asking for the board to consider the adoption of this resolution.
Any questions? And I don't see in here if this has to be unanimous.
Well, I think for this, if you don't do it, then you can't have it as on your levy limit worksheet.
So it's a benefit to us.
Yeah, it really is. So, but yeah, that's where I think it's a little different with the rate schedule, is that if a municipality doesn't adopt it, I don't think they can claim it on their levy limit exemption.
All right. Any questions? If not, we do need a motion to approve this resolution.
I'll make a motion that we pass the levy limit exception for the North Shore Fire Department.
It's been moved by trustee Quirk and seconded by trustee Segrist to approve the resolution 2213, authorizing an exception to the levy limits for charges for the North Shore Fire Department pursuant to 2005 Wisconsin Act 484. We will take a roll call vote. Trustee Booker.
Aye.
Trustee Segrist.
Aye.
Trustee Owens. Trustee Thompson.
Aye.
Trustee Quirk.
Aye.
Trustee Johnson. President Montgomery, aye. Motion carries. Resolution is approved. Next item on our agenda is to consider library carpet replacement quote. Tyler.
Yes. So right now the library has no carpet in the basement. It was after a lengthy period of trying to remove any moisture from the basement, and there was quite a bit down there. We had the carpet taken out, as well as some other work that was down there that will provide you a more detailed update in 2 weeks at the October 17th board meeting. But in order for us to have operations down there, we need to replace the carpet. So we reached out to some different carpet vendors. 2 submitted us quotes, the Carpet Land and then DE Custom Floors, who actually did the carpet from last time. They came in at a much better rate and cost compared to Carpet Land. So we're recommending to proceed with them. Not only low cost, but the fact they know and did the original installation, I think is a nice benefit as well. As far as funding, we are still working with our property liability insurer as far as covering the costs, which once again, I'll have more of an update with you in 2 weeks. You know, the proposal for now is that if, you know, who knows what will be covered, but whatever the village will cover, that half of it will be covered with the village, half through the library, understanding it's the village facility, but a library space. So that's how we're going to continue to operate right now. But because this is a unbudgeted expense, I didn't want to proceed with going through the carpet replacement until the board approved it.
Okay. Questions? Trustee Owens,
So who we're gonna go with, which one?
DE Custom Floors.
the ones that did it before.
They were the lower cost and are more familiar with the space. Yeah,
Would they be putting the same type of carpet color and all?
they're gonna mimic it as much as they can. So, yeah, we feel confident that it'll have a similar look to the previous carpet.
And it matches the rest of the language.
Yes.
Other, Trustee Johnson.
With the carpet replacement, is there any other damage to any of the shelving or anything else in this area?
Matthew could probably respond to that better. I know they had to do some work with the drywall and then some of the shelving units, like, I know that got a little wet, so they're worried about molding in that. So Matthew, do you mind talking about that briefly?
Yeah, that's pretty much spot on. They took about 6 inches off the bottom of the drywall all throughout the basement. And so after the carpet goes back in the drywall. Go back in.
Do you have a cost related to that?
Yes, and we'll talk about that more during the 17th. So I wanted to talk about that in closed session with you also. We discussed some of the strategies, talking with our property insurer.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll have a full update in 2 weeks on that.
Other questions? If this is approved tonight, when was the timeline?
ASAP. So we're, yeah, that's, we had to rush to get these quotes in just so we can start getting the work done on this right away. We want to be very cognizant of the reciprocal borrowing that, we get for the library and just with everything with the road construction this year and that we want to do everything that we can. So, yeah, right, tomorrow we'll get the schedule and once I get kind of an estimated time of completion, I'll make sure you report on that.
Trustee Johnson.
Was carpet the only material you look at some type of other type of vinyl flooring for that area?
We had a brief internal discussion about other flooring. I mean, I think my initial thought was like, this happened once, if this happens again, do we have to go through this whole process again? But we feel really confident this was like a one-time event. So I thought about doing like a hard flooring in case, we had water coming in, but I think we feel really confident it's a one-time ordeal. So, working with the library, they really feel, they want to keep that carpet for, aesthetics. It's just, I think originally they went with carpet in case like of moving stuff and then I can't remember all the decision that went into it. But yeah, we had that discussion but decided to keep it the same. Yeah.
Trustee Owens.
I see you, the breakdown for this folder. What's the total cost?
That is total cost.
Yeah.
So it'll be 47,000 to do the replacement.
So the top line.
Right
Yeah.
Only
And we had Paul Davis already broke it out, so that cost would have been a lot higher. We had to have them do all that labor, which was quite expensive too. So once again, we'll have more of an update in 2 weeks when we talk about that.
Other questions? If not, we need a motion to, Trustee Owens.
Contract with the custom floors to take care of the other dams that was done to the garden.
Well, this approval is just for the carpet. So can you amend?
Sure. Move approval of the for the replacement of the carpet for the damage done to the garden.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved by Trustee Owens and seconded by Trustee Thompson to approve the replacement quote to have the library carpet replaced. All those in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And now, the big ticket item. Presentation of our overall summary and general fund of 2023 proposed budget for the village. And at your places, I think tonight you should have gotten a copy of our org chart. So you can at least see as we're talking where people are and some of the positions. And I think a number of people may be speaking tonight, but I'll defer to Tyler. But after each presentation, we'll have an opportunity for you to ask questions. And this is, we're not approving anything tonight, we're just being presented information, you can ask questions, suggestions. Someone already thought that they would be offering tons of amendments. We'll see about that, we won't call names, but, okay.
Thank you. I'm letting Nathan go, by the way.
Yeah.
At this point, it's just a presentation, so. Thank you, Nathan. So this is exciting. I don't know how everyone's feelings are when it comes to a budget, but there's a lot of time and effort that goes into staff to compile the budget. It's a great opportunity just to have global, big picture discussions on services. So, anytime we have a budget discussion, I get pretty excited. So I thank you for being part of that process, but I'm excited for tonight. A lot of people, or especially department heads, thank you for all the time you put in, especially Derek. I can't tell you how hard it is for someone to come into July and their first task is to help work and put together the budget. And Derek did such a fantastic job. I honestly don't know if like another new person would have been able to do it the way Derek did. He just did a fabulous job. So please know that I'm very complimentary of Derek and the time that he was able to invest. There was a number of times where when I was leaving, Derek was still here for a number of hours to get this ready for you tonight. So know that a lot of time went into that, and I want to make sure Derek got that recognition. So tonight we're going to be doing the overall summary as well as the general fund, and then talk about North Shore Health Department. We have already done some previous stuff with the budget. We already worked on the capital improvement plan, which you adopted as a board on October 17th. We will highlight that to let you know, just as a reminder, where we're at for the capital. But we also had that pre-budget meeting where you were able to talk about your expectations. I think we presented a budget that will meet those expectations, but tonight I see it as a working meeting. So the budget that's in front of you tonight is just a proposed budget. There are a number of ways that we can still make changes and evaluate things, and I'll get to that in a moment. But please know that the thing that's in, or the document that's in front of you, staff, we are certainly open to having discussions on some potential changes that can be made to that. But for October 17th, we'll then dive into capital, debt service, TIF, utilities, and special revenue funds. That should take about the same amount of time that the other items take today. And then if there's any follow-up items on the budget, we will do November 7th. I don't anticipate much, if anything, will be needed for that meeting, especially because we want to make sure we do the proper notification requirement for the public hearing, which is scheduled for November 21st. Okay,
And so to be clear, we do not need the meeting of October 10th.
That is correct. We feel confident we were able to put together a schedule that doesn't need another meeting. We did some shuffling of some agenda items, so there'll be some things that we would have probably done this month that pushed to next month. But I still feel like those meetings in November will be back. So I think we'll be able to be okay on that. So no October 10th meeting. Okay. Structure of tonight, we're going to go through each department. Who will give a 2 to 5 minute presentation before we get to the general fund. Derek and I will kind of take team giving that overall summary. Each department though or each fund will highlight for you the 2022 major accomplishments, as well as what goals they have for 2023 that may impact the budget. So it just gives a nice overview for you as far as what those changes are and what they've already done. After each presentation, you as a board will have the opportunity to ask questions for staff, make any public comments, or propose any recommended changes. I have a form that I'm gonna be filling out as we go. That if you have any changes that you would like or long-term things to look into, I'll be keeping that list. Because I think this is a nice opportunity for us to just reflect on services, there's gonna be things that will come out of this that won't impact the budget, but it might be policy things you want the staff to look into down the road. So just know I'm keeping two different lists. One list specifically focuses on changes to the 23 budget, and the other are kind of those big picture policy items. If we have a proposed change though for this proposed budget, I would just ask that we do a quick straw poll to make sure that there's a majority of board members that support that to go on the list, okay? And then between myself and the finance director, we'll be kind of keeping a live update on the levy impact. I just like to let you know as a board, as we go along, if there's something that you want to propose doing, what the levy impact will be. Now, because of our budget size, the math actually works out kind of nicely. Our levy is roughly right around, or from a budget perspective, is right around 10 million. So because of that, for every 10,000 you want to move in any direction is about a 0.1% impact. So kind of use that as a barometer. While we certainly can talk about items that are, 1,000 or less, and I truly do believe that we want to make sure that we review everything. I also want to understand that some of the items that are larger in nature will have a larger impact on the tax levy. So, I would just recommend that, our time that's allocated between tonight and the 17th, that we keep that in mind. So any changes we'll make, I'll give you live updates where we're at with the tax levy. Okay. Derek?
All right, let's talk about the tax levy. You want to go to the next page. So this is a breakdown of the levy that makes up our 23 budget. So we wanted to do an overall 2% increase in the general fund. And we should point out that that includes, like we were talking about earlier, there's a roughly 4.5% increase for fire. There's a 3% increase for consolidated dispatch services. We took 372,000 in the capital budget and took it down to 327,000. And that increase for yearly items like tasers and body armor is also included in this. So we feel pretty good about getting this amount to 2%. The debt service amount is our debt payments, interest and principal for the debt we took out that relates to the capital items. So if we take out debt, it could be for storm, sewer, water, or TID related. These are the ones that were planned to be paid back via the levy. The capital fund is what we went over the last several months, all those capital items like police cars and things like that. Like I said, it was 372 in the prior year, so we took that down, put it, the difference went into that general fund amount. The library had a flat 3% increase, and this is the first time in a while they've had that. We've been talking to Tyler, we want to do where they're going to be able to, run their business over there and actually keep people and everything. So we're going to try and give them an increase going forward that is similar to the COLA increase. Community center, ponds, parks, that is was 53.5 in the prior year, and that was another one that had been constant for many, many years, and we increased it up to 60. It's a very tight squeeze in the Park and Recs department right now, trying to budget for their employees and just the general shortfalls sometimes in revenue. I think we're talking about possibly reserve fee increases there also. But that went up a little bit. And special events is something we've never done. And I believe a lot of that was tourism, right?
Yeah, so yeah, once we get to special events, we'll spend some time talking about what went into that. My main message when we get to that is the current funding method for special events is not sustainable. It was using revenue sources that we just aren't seeing anymore. So we'll get to that, but we wanted you to see that it is part of that tax levy breakdown.
So we wanted to give them just a small amount, like, for example, part of that, I think fireworks was around 15,000 this year, and it's expected to be 18,000 next year. So that is what makes up our current levy. Is there any questions, anything that goes into that?
Yeah, I think, before Derek continues the other things, I just want to reiterate, I've already talked about the challenges with levy limits and expenditure restraint program. That I'm going to use every time we talk about the budget to reiterate that. And especially with levy limits, when it's all based on net new construction, we saw a 0.16% increase in net new construction. So, I mean, there's some pretty significant challenges there. Luckily, for the expenditure restraint program, we don't have that as a huge issue just because of what the rate of inflation is this year with CPI. But in other years, that will be something that I'll talk about more with you as a board. So, but yeah, levy limits, that's something that we wanted to make sure we didn't increase the levy too much, just so we could meet that levy limit constraint.
That 0.16 comes out to about 14,000, which will allow to increase the levy by for the net new construction. And we're expecting that to be more next year. I believe next year will include the green.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll have a larger amount of use for that. And the expenditure restraint program, they do a CPI number every year, and I think it's 7.7% they're allowing us, plus then 60% of the net new construction. So we do have a lot where we're legally allowed to raise our total expenditures by this year.
For this year or next year?
For this year.
For this year,
And I would imagine next year's gonna be pretty high.
High.
yeah, yeah, we're well under the 7.7.
Okay.
So yeah, that was not a concern at all.
So those are the two main issues in doing a government budget. You have what you're allowed to do with your levy limit, and then your total expenditure allowed.
Questions?
So we're going to go to the general fund summary. Derek, you want to keep going?
Sure.
Great.
So as I mentioned, the 2% increase, we did a flat, we just did last year's times 1.2, 1.02. We're not projecting any increase in hotel revenue. It's been, I don't know if we've quite gotten where we were pre-COVID, but we are projecting that to be similar to this year until we see evidence that it goes up again. One of the difficulties too is trying to get the budget to where you have a balanced budget, your revenues equals your expenses. So I believe in 2016, it was decided in order to meet a flat year with little inflation, they moved the court out of the general fund and into its own special revenue fund. And we think
What year was
it was 2016
it? Oh, okay.
for the 2017 year.
Okay.
It was done at the end of 2016. And right now, with the expenditure restraint being higher than it normally would be, we feel that this would be a good time to move the court back into the general fund. I believe in most municipalities, that's where you're gonna see it.
Yeah, the huge benefit we're going to get now is, I mean, we'll talk about this later, but when you look at the fund balance for that special revenue fund, it's like $500,000. It's pretty large. It's been accruing over time because the courts or the fees, fines and citations is so high compared to the expenditures you need for court.
Mhm.
So what's going to happen to allow, by moving court back to the general fund, allows us to utilize that additional revenue to help pay for other services of the general fund. So that will be a nice benefit for us. I certainly understand why it was done previously to get around, like, you know, or for a variety of different reasons. But at this time, it's a huge benefit for us to have it back in the general fund.
Because if it wasn't in the general fund, we couldn't use it. I mean.
No, and the special revenue fund just sits and the fund balance is growing.
Right.
So, yeah, so this will be a great help to the general fund.
It also helps us balance the budget too, because it has about 170,000 in expected revenue over expenses for next year.
Mhm.
Does the court have any say in where they're going?
No, I definitely informed the court clerk, so Debbie certainly knows, but for them, it doesn't change their operations or anything. Yeah, great question.
I think the main thing there would be that there's a separation of duties between police police and court, which there still will be. So some of our decreases, I think it relates more to just the overall streaming aspect that has become the way a lot of people live. So we get a percentage of cable bills, so we get Spectrum and DirecTV. They give us a cable fee, the tax amount they get on there, and that's been going down and down. So that court will help offset that. And we had a down year in building permit also. But we could have, like a year ago, we had a really big year. I think that was your question.
Right, but I think that was because of the dog.
Right, exactly.
And it may be gone, I haven't paid attention lately, but a lot of times when you shop in the village, there's this additional tax, like if you do buy a phone or, and so that's going there.
Well, right, well,
Well, we
this is more related to your actual cable bill. Like, it's
Okay.
one of those fees they throw on there. So we get money directly from Spectrum and from DirecTV. And the amounts have just been decreasing over the years.
And services.
So we haven't got our transportation data on yet, but our overall, that expenditure restraint program we mentioned was projected to go about 30,000. So that's why it's important that we fall within the expenditure restraint amounts, because we're expected to get over 300,000 next year from that. But besides for that, the overall state share revenue is more or less pretty flat compared to this year. And that is, again, we have not gotten our transportation data money, which is a large amount for us.
So that's, Derek and I were hoping we would have it by now.
We're only going to Friday.
So, this number is right now for us 515,000, but it can fluctuate by plus or minus 50,000. I mean, that's a big deal. So this is going to be the one thing we should find out by the next meeting. But if it dips more, that would be something that when we talk on the 17th, we will have some other options to consider. We're hoping it's flat because that's what we put in the budget, but this is probably the last thing that we have not received confirmation on. And that's just because the state always reports it late September, early October. We have no control over when that number is issued. So
we hope that it's flat and goes up.
or if it goes up, right, then it's great. I mean, then we have that's a great problem because it's the question of, do you want to lower the levy? Which you could, or is there something that went unfunded that, we could propose some options that's unfunded if you want to do that too. So, yeah. Okay.
So on the next page, we do a breakdown of just the overall revenue of the government and what percentage, where we get our funding from. So as you can see, property taxes is by far and away the major revenue source for the general fund. And I didn't include in that, it includes the hotel amounts, and also we get a payment from the water department. So basically, they pay us a property tax on their infrastructure. And the intergovernmental amount would be anything from another, like any grant. Any grants, I think we have a small one in our police department. And then we charge fee amounts to the utilities and special revenue costs, admin fees. License and permits are the building permits, any liquor license or animal license. The fines, citations, 450 is from court, and 50,000 is parking ticket, which goes in directly, it's a police department revenue.
Thank you.
And charges for service and other revenues there also. So as we mentioned, we were gonna move the court over. I think we talked about that already. We were planning on doing a cost of living adjustment of 1.5% on January 1st and 1.5% on July 1st. This is one of the higher bumps in the North Shore. We fought hard to keep this in there. We feel it's important, especially in a year like this year, when anyone that's gone to a pump or a grocery store realizes that inflation is a real thing. So we were able to split it in half, and that cuts the overall from 3 down to like 2.26%.
Yeah.
And then,
Let me talk about that a little bit more, because we're also in the middle of union negotiations, which that'll be able to provide more of an update to you on November 7th. That'll be probably a closed session agenda item, but we have made some really good progress there. So, but for COLA, originally we had built in the budget at 3%. So when we got the initial number, Derek, we had about a $150,000 gap that we needed to cover. So one of the things that we could do was doing the split gave us about 30 or 40,000 to cover that gap. The issue that we're having is people in the private sector who compete for our employees are giving much higher increases. Derek is one example in the audit world. I know they're giving a lot of their people like a 10% increase to try to keep the talent there. So, you know, engineering is another example where, Matthew, you know, a lot of people in the private sector are getting well over your 3%. So that's where we're trying to be able to do our best to keep up with the inflation and some of the increases we're seeing on the private side, but also stay within, you know, kind of where we're seeing it in the public agency and also meet with our budget constraints. So the split allows us to do that a little bit nicer. So there's other years I would recommend a split, but just because of the high inflation, and I think that kind of meets our budget objectives, but keeps up with inflation as much as we can.
and we decided to, in past years, well, in all the past years around there, the village clerk was part of the village manager's budget. So we moved that out of there and created it as its own budget. So that's Karen and all the election.
Sure. What's the benefit?
No, there's no benefit.
There's no financial benefit.
It's just for transparency's sake, and I mean, honestly, like, we have a very qualified, great clerk who I want her to manage her own budget. So, I mean, in years past, it's that her position has been treated more of a
Administrative.
yeah, it's a position, and like, while Karen helps provide some great administrative support to all departments, Karen's got a lot of ability where I want her to have that opportunity to manage her own budget. So it's more from a presentation perspective, but it allows more leadership opportunity for Karen to manage that.
And historically, Amos, it actually was a village manager clerk position about 22 years ago when Ross Van Gonk was here. So that's kind of why it was in the manager's.
There's still parts of the code that refer to the manager/clerk. I keep reading. Yeah. Okay, keep going here.
So for the last, our custodian of several years, Pat Woodorf, he retired on September 9th, I believe. And we have been using Give building maintenance since then. And we feel this is a great way to save money also with having, I mean, it's only gonna get harder to hire anybody, like you might think a custodian, but when you get, you know, salary, WRS, benefits, I mean, you're looking at a 90 to $100,000 position. Well, when it's all said and done, so we're gonna be able to save about over 60,000 a year. And we're kind of in the trial right now, we're seeing how it works, but I feel like it's going pretty well.
And just so, because he announced his retirement, so our plan is do it 6 months. If it's successful, we will do an RFP process for being competitive. We don't want to lock into a contract before we feel like it works well. And also, we didn't have time to do an RFP from the time that he announced his retirement yet. So, you know, this gives us kind of a good 6 month barometer to see how it's working. But the savings in the budget is pretty significant. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to call it the summary for your attention.
I was just gonna say, I think that's a good idea. They did that a lot at the town when we had contracted, you know, services out for janitorial.
Yeah, I think it'll be a nice win for the village. So, and so far we've been getting good service. So,
I mean, you're substituting everyday service for basically every other day, which I think is fine.
Trustee Johnson.
Yeah, just going back to salaries. Looking at the median income, if I'm making, say, 40,000, 2,000, what kind of impact would that have? What kind of increase I'm taking on part additional dollars? Looking at the median income, is that $1,000 more a year, $2,000 more a year?
Based on what we're proposing,
Yeah, just looking at the median, you know,
Well, 50,000 would
Yeah.
be 1,500 more a year.
Yeah.
Based on 3%, yes.
okay.
yeah, I would say the average for village employees is right around, probably 60, I want to say. Yeah, so I would say you're looking about $1,800 increase on average. That's the average income.
So this year we have a new position for marketing and communications coordinator. Today was actually our first day, so this is the village's first time in a long time that we are actually fully staffed right now. We're all pretty excited. But we took some of the employee recognition funding and we moved it so we could create that position. So if you go back a couple of years ago, there used to be 2 strictly admin assistants, and we kind of combined them into where now we have a marketing coordinator who's also will help out at the front counter, and we have a deputy treasurer who will also help out at the front counter. And we are very lucky right now to have Diane who worked at Sherwood for almost 20 years, I believe.
Yeah.
She's currently filling in part-time 3 to 4 days a week when necessary.
We got Steve.
We have Steve up there too. Yeah. He's doing a really good job.
He's a police officer who is. He is work restrictions. He had non-work injury, so he has work restrictions, so we're helping him with light duty, so he is filled in. So right now, he's helping now part-time with Village Hall as well as the Park and Rec department.
Come on over, so that is Steve.
And he's great. We really like him a lot.
We currently have a 0.5 vacancy. This is, the chief was kind enough to put off hiring of his executive secretary, is planning to retire in May. And even if it wasn't, even if they do hire more, we feel like it's a pretty reasonable number considering we have over 80 full-time employees, the 0.5 vacancy in the budget. But that is where it specifically relates to as of right now.
I want to just hit on the point that even though it's located in the police department, that really is for the general fund. So if we determine that based on staffing that we want to fill any of his FTEs sooner, and we know of other vacancies that will happen in the general fund, we have that flexibility. Still just know that for his department, he would be slightly over on wages in that circumstance, and another department would be under, but at the end it would balance. So in the end, we just need the general fund to balance. So that's just a placeholder right now in his budget, just because it's the largest department.
And I kind of mentioned this when I first started talking about levy, but it's with our fire and our dispatch, those are mostly the consolidated services. But we were able to get to the 2% even with the higher amounts that we don't really have much, negotiation with our fire, so this is what our increase is going to be. Those, so we do, like I mentioned, we feel pretty good with the 2% overall levy in the general fund.
The only thing we want to highlight with this chart is, there are some things that were out of our control that we had to operate around to make it work. The big one is other public safety. That fire contribution is one of the largest expenditures in the general fund. And when they're asking for, a 4.7% increase, and we're trying to get within 2%, that really restricts what we can do. So if you look outside, all other departments other than Public Works, which we'll get to later, there's some weight. We have some younger Public Works employees that just started who are well under what the others are making. So that's why you see one of the reasons why you see a larger increase in Public Works. But with other public safety at 4.56%, we had to get creative in the other departments. And I wanted Derek to highlight some of those twos to understand some of the things that we were able to look at as a team to get to that number that we wanted, so.
So, yeah, this is a breakdown by department. I think with the police, they have a relatively young force right now, so they were able to be a very reasonable increase there. As Tyler was just talking about public safety, there's not much we can do there. And the health department, that's our contribution, that's what we pay North Shore Health, so I think the small decrease results in a reallocation.
Right.
It's not, I think the overall contribution went up 3% around here. The way it's.
Yeah, Custom Charlotte as the home sites of the health department went down, and everyone kind of went up.
Park and rec, that decrease is mostly related to just, you had, I think, a year ago, there was budgeted for 2 family insurance plans, and this year is 2 single. And then there's just a small 1 in 8 budget for the, portion of the marketing partner.
Is that marketing coordinator? Oh, the new position. Okay, all right.
So that overall increase doesn't include court too. Sure.
In community development, under salaries, there was a 26,000 some increase. Is that the portion of the marketing coordinator?
Yeah, well, there would be a COLA raise and then the marketing coordinator.
Yeah, the marketing coordinator was divided under 3 departments. There's some positions we do that cross over multiple departments. So I think we have it as a point, is it 0.4?
Yeah, she's
Of the
a
FTE that
she's a 32-hour week employee, 0.4 went to community services.
So a question that came up either last year or the year before, looking at cost allocations for positions. Do you have that in terms of, just like you just said, a portion of the marketing position, positions on the community
Yes,
services?
yes, we do have that.
Okay.
Yeah, you will get that as a board once we go through this, and it's all active. It'll be part of the public hearing on the 21st.
Wonderful.
Yes.
So, question. So, are all the positions full-time equivalents or are some of them part-time?
Some of them, well, like I just mentioned, so our new marketing coordinator is planning on working 32 hours a week, so we budget her as a 0.8 FTE. So I
Yeah,
think
we have
it's-
a part-time admin assistant who works 12 or 16 hours, so that's like a point, up to a 0.4 FTE. So there's few, most are a full FTE full-time, but we do have some examples where we have less than a full-time FTE.
DPW has several seasonal employees, Park and Rec has a lot of seasonal employees with Ripping Pond and the rec programs.
Is this a time that they can ask questions?
Yeah.
Sure. So the ones that are part-time, say like if it's 0.8 or 0.2, do you have to pay them benefits to?
Or 0.8 would get a reduced benefit. And I don't, like the smaller one, I don't think our 0.4 gets any at that point.
Yeah, right now in the employee handbook, you have to work a minimum of 20 hours. But as Derek said, if you're not working 40 hours, anything under that is prorated. So it'd be more expensive for the employee share and less expensive for the employer share.
So is this accommodating employees needs or the organizational needs to have them on board?
Both.
Yeah, I think there's just more things that Tyler wants to do with the village that he wasn't able to do without the position. Right?
Are you talking specifically with the marketing communication coordinator? Oh, yeah. I mean, let's use that as an example. We recruited that both as a full-time and part-time position. Staff knows my sweet spot was right around 30 hours. I felt was going to be perfect for this position. But if we found the perfect candidate at 40, I wanted to get the perfect candidate. We found the perfect candidate who wanted to work 32 hours. So that was a wonderful situation we walked into. You know, I felt like at the front counter, we have a deputy clerk who's the main person that helps at the front counter. But there's during peak times that we have the desire for more assistance needed. So I don't, you know, we don't need a full another FT helping but a part-time FT. So that's where another example where we have a, you know, a 0.4 FT helping at the front counter. So it all depends on the circumstance, but there's wins for both.
Trustee Johnson.
Going back to benefits, when it comes to health, I know there was a huge decrease, about $45,000. And I just don't see that trend going downward when it comes to healthcare. Which one are you looking at? I guess I'm looking at the overall general fund.
Yeah, so what happens, so every year what happens is depending on people that you replace in the budget, it will change that number. I can tell you on our health insurance renewals, it's a flat increase. Your health insurance rates are all dependent on your loss claim ratio. The village's loss claim ratio is about 60%. That means the insurance company made some money on our group. And because we know that, we fought hard to tell them we should leave it as it is because they're already making money on us. And they agreed. So it's a flat increase. Now, if we ever have a loss claim ratio that's above 80%, that's probably worthy of an increase once you get to that point, but 60% is really good. So what you see there is probably younger people coming onto the plan who might be single instead of family, and that would reduce the employer's contribution because you're only paying for one rather than two or more people.
He was looking specifically at these.
Yeah. Perfect example
There's
of
been
younger.
a large turnover in the police department.
Yeah.
So I mean, anytime you bring in employees, it's gonna vary, single family.
I'm not sure where that, noise is coming.
I don't either.
Is the mic up? Well, we don't hear anything from that. Maybe it's just. Okay.
So everyone has our org chart, so, but we include it there and we can even include that in the final adoption of the budget if people find that helpful. Okay.
And currently, I don't see, well, no vacant position. But if we are, they're not listed.
What's that?
We don't have any vacant positions.
Well,
I
that
know.
was for the 20, I think the police department is in the process of hiring their last vacant position.
We lost our parks assistant. That position is on.
That position is also in the process of interviewing right now. So our recruiting person. Not, sorry, recreation.
Supervisor.
Okay. All right, so this is where we're gonna jump to the general fund where we'll spend 2 to 5 minutes on each one. Some of the smaller ones might even be quicker, but I'll highlight these first two and then I'll open it up to any questions to either. So village board, we're not anticipating any professional services needed for 2023. So that I think in previous years, sometimes, a few thousand are thrown at that line item, but we have that at 0. And then we have all compensation and training allocations kept the same. And then for village attorney, I've been monitoring those expenses on a monthly basis and Nathan's been a little under what we had projected for 22, so that's good. So we feel like there's a little room there that if we have slightly more hours needed of Nathan, we would still meet the 60,000. So no increases there for 23. We had a few things that we were anticipating for some other legal fees, but nothing's on the horizon for that. So we decrease that just a little bit where we still have some money there in case necessary. So any questions on village board or village attorney?
So regarding the village attorney, is who still in the contract?
Yes, but this is focusing on general counsel. So this would just be Nathan, anything that that foods would be charged goes elsewhere. It's not in this.
Any other questions?
So I mentioned, for the meeting, that I want to request.
This is the perfect time to do it. Yep.
To add in an increase for, the stipend to, I don't know if there's ever been an increase, so $300. None.
So I mentioned to trustee Booker that That could be done if the board desired. The one thing to note is it can never be done for the current board. It has to be done for a future board. So you wouldn't get that immediately. We would have to wait for the next election cycle for that increase to.
So you can't vote for yourself for a raise.
Correct. Correct. So if that's something that the board is interested in, that's where, I don't know if you have any discussion, but depending on your discussion, if you want to take a straw poll, so I knew, if you want to change that number, what do you want to change it to? That would be helpful.
And I guess the question would be, there's nobody here right now who, well, Matthew and Nate, but I don't know if they would know. Do we have anywhere we can go back and look and see how long ago this amount has been in place and compare it to other municipalities throughout? 'Cause I think there is a chart.
I have a chart that compares you to other municipalities. So, if you wanted to table making that decision until you see that, I can provide that to you in between meetings here. And, depending if we have time in the next meeting, we can talk about that. Otherwise, that could be a, potential November 7th agenda item too.
I think that would be important for people to see. And along with that, is there information about the size of the municipalities, how many meetings there, committees, and, because I think each municipality does, some only have one meeting a month, some don't serve on any committees, so I think,
I have
the work might be
population,
different.
I have population size, I know on there. I don't have number of meetings, but that can easily be added.
Okay, yeah, so we can get it, so people at least have something to react to. Do we need a strong vote?
Yeah, I like to be able to see the information.
So I hear at least 4. So I will provide that for your next meeting on the 17th, and we'll see if we have time to circle back on that. Okay.
Other questions? If not, we'll go to village managers office 2022 accomplishments. 6 months in, 7 months in?
Yeah, it's gone quickly, really quickly. I told someone the other day that how long I've been here, they thought it was like 3 months, so it's gone by quickly. I, on a personal note, have loved it so much, so thank you everyone so far for the time. I've been so appreciative. And while we've had a bundle of stuff come up, I have enjoyed every minute of it, so thank you. Accomplishments so far, we reorganized multiple positions. We transitioned the IT service agreement to the Village of Bayside, gave us more hours, also less cost. That was the next one. Reviewed a number of volunteer committees, which I'm working on updating those ordinances, and that will be brought to you in November. And there will be some, once they're brought to you, I'll also be reaching out to the volunteer committees that would be potentially be impacted to let them know the potential changes to get their feedback. I've done a number of human resource changes in both in the handbook as well as just how we operate with a salary range schedule and that, which is all going to be coming to the personnel committee for a December meeting. That Goshen and I have worked a number of hours and are close to being done with that. So that's right on schedule. Assess the financial stability of the organization, bunch of intergovernmental cooperation. And then I've had the joy, my family too, which they've enjoyed a bunch of community events. I've been trying to meet with also community groups and businesses on a bi-weekly / monthly basis too. So that's a goal that I'll continue doing forever. For the proposed budget, a lot of the expenses are transitioning out of the department, so it looks really good for this year. That's related to the clerk. We used to have an employee performance line that we eliminated to provide funding for the marketing and communications coordinator. We can still do those stipends through saving employee wage savings, as I mentioned at an earlier meeting. We'll continue to pursue, development opportunities, which will use the marketing communications coordinator to help with some materials to support, and we'll continue our collaborative efforts with municipalities and the school district. So So from a budgetary perspective, not much changes other than shifting outside the clerk. So, are there any questions?
I have a question there. If there was something that, I guess, if you had the resources, what would it be that you would try to implement?
I mean, there's probably a few things and it depends on the priorities. Some of the things I have on my list to present to you will happen in 23. A lot of it depends on, you know, the timing of staff, right? So some of the initiatives I'd love to do, like I don't want to throw at someone right away. You know, Nate and I walked through with marketing communications coordinator a roadmap today where we gradually have some initiatives. So I think for me, you know, one thing, if I, in a perfect world, had some great, you know, additional resources, you know, having some time for additional research on things would be really helpful, and having someone that can provide that general research to help the village departments would be nice. Proactive code enforcement is a high ticket item, and I'm hoping that we can address that soon. But that I would have up there as a high ticket item that we're kind of lacking right now. And then my third thing is more resources for park and recreation. I mean, I came from where I was in Shorewood, had a staff of 6, providing some almost not completely similar services, but somewhat similar services compared here. That's a pretty drastic difference. And Danny puts in so many hours during the summer. I mean, that's going to burn anyone out. So those are kind of my 3 things in a perfect world. If I had additional resources where I want to put them, but I mean, that's probably a longer list, but I'm trying to prioritize that in the moment. So
And the reality is, even though we don't have aggressive code enforcement, we still have village. So somebody can pull off either the police or community services or DPW. So the resources are being diverted, but it's hard to track. And not to mention those of you that get called, or I get called, like today.
Going back to the first one, the researching of additional stuff in that, what I'm getting, I mean, I don't want to talk around what I'm trying to get at. I want to always be drop development. That would be someone, I would love to eventually have someone that is like an assistant on the village manager track, similar to what Michael had here. Mentorship is incredibly important to me. I've had a bunch of mentors that helped me get to where I am today. And honestly, like, if there's a time that, like, you know, I was out of the office to help with, you know, to have backup services and that, to have someone trained in that profession would be nice. I want to wait a while before we get back to that point, but I can tell you in the profession, there are a number of managers who started their careers as an assistant around here. It was perhaps the most desirable assistant position in the state of Wisconsin, and that's no longer there. So to me, that might be a future goal of mine by year 1, year 2. Like, that's not something, and the timing of the organization has to be ready for that. Today, we have such a great staff, and we have other areas I see as a higher priority that I'm not going to call for that today, but in the future, you know, if the timing is right, that might be something that I would be interested in discussing.
Yes.
Related to the comprehensive plan that should be wrapping up, are there any things that you see that could be queued up right away that we need to deal with that will help move your job forward or make it easier or make the village a little bit more sound, what we do?
I don't think so. I mean, there's gonna be some things that come out of it that are, I don't think it will like allocate for more resources, but maybe some, you know, few initiatives. You know, I think there's a large education piece that will come out of that I would like to work with Nate on to get to the public. And when it focuses on land use, you know, there are some things with our businesses in particular that I think we need to reevaluate that land space a little bit. And when I say reevaluate, maybe more of a mixed use rather than just, you know, retail, for example. But I think that's where, to be honest, I'm kind of, while that will be important, I'm also really interested in see what the comprehensive park plan comes out, because I think there are some park areas that we could do differently as well. So I think that's where I'll be curious to see how the two plans could tie in as far as some future initiatives that the village does. And that's where we do have the funding for the comp park plan in the 23 budget. On the comp plan, Nate, do you have anything to add at all?
No,
I don't have anything concrete, but
I think you're right. And what we're starting to hear from the initial feedback is things that reinforce what we already understand about areas that need to see change, the marketplace, portions of Rounder Road. We're hearing about code compliance and property maintenance, and we're hearing about diversity of housing types. And so I see it kind of highlighting a lot that we recognize and are already trying to strategize about doing something with.
a perfect, I just needed a minute, sorry, a perfect public art. Public art is an area that I don't know if in the past has been talked about much, but could be, when I talk about tying, the parks and the comp plan together, like public art, I think it's an area we could put together a more formalized plan on. So that would be an example of something that could come out of these discussions that could be a future discussion topic.
I'm glad to hear
Yeah.
that. That's part of my priorities.
Okay.
Can I jump in here? We need to paint the water tower.
Yes.
It's an opportunity for public art.
Yes.
A mural or some kind of, interesting paint application as opposed to just slapping on white.
Yeah, there's a lot of public art opportunities, but that's certainly a visible location, so.
And in terms of public art, we have a lot of artists in Brownfield. It might not be a bad opportunity to do some kind of an invitation to have them present some art, like the guys got the devil. Well, he got a big metal art set there. But it's an opportunity to maybe invite people to create, like, give us some ideas of art to go in Brownfield.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You can have, context for that. Because I was thinking about when I did like the Route 66 tour in Tucumcari and in Albuquerque. They actually had what they call road arts. And the government had put up like some different grants and things like that for them to, and it was a contest basically. And based on, certain areas of Route 66, they made different types of art that reflected those areas. And it was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we have to do it on a small scale.
Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to mention, and it may not happen this year, but I think it happened last year where the hotels, I think a couple of them, that did not meet their income when it came time to pay the taxes, they wanted us to forgive a part of them. So we made, and I don't know if you were made aware of that, because they may come back.
Yep.
And I don't remember what we did last year. Yeah. So we need to think about that.
Okay.
One other thing I just want to suggest, as we move forward with developers, and I see this happening in other areas where there's a requirement that these developers put a certain portion towards some type of art or something within outside of their development that can go toward around here to increase their, image around art and engagement.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, and all things, absolutely. And I think, once we get the marketing communications coordinator up to speed, once we get both the comp plan done and the comp park plan done, I think we'll have some tools to really put together a more formalized program in place. And there's a few options of how we can do that public art. And at that time, I'll present it to you. It'll probably be a later 2023 initiative. But that will be coming to you later next year to take a look at what that presentation would look, or that program would look like.
All right, so next up, Village clerk.
Yes, I am up. Review of the 2022 accomplishments, coordinated and administered 3 successful elections. There was a successful hire of a new deputy clerk / administrative assistant. A front desk manual has been created for all employees to reference whenever they have to step up to the front desk.
Is that electronic?
Yes.
Or, okay,
Yep.
so you can update.
Accordingly, yeah. 19 business and or restaurant liquor licenses were issued. And there was a collaboration with the Elections Commission in Milwaukee County for the creation of a voting board. 2023 proposed budget major highlights. The Badger books, which are electronic poll books, will be implemented for all future elections.
Now, that hasn't changed over there. I don't know why.
Oh. I'm not, ensure that the village's municipal code is maintained and up to date with current ordinance revisions. Continue creating online submissions for commonly used forms. Explore implementation of a business license application through BSNA, which is our financial software. Coordinate scanning of all license paperwork into a digitized format. And there is a slight decrease in allocated funds for election workers due to less elections in 2023. Theoretically, there should be less election inspectors for the electronic poll books as well. One of the plus.
So we have what, next year, we have the one in April, but it's not one in the fall.
Correct. If there's a primary needed, that would be in February.
And if it's a special, well, who knows, about special elections, but,
And then that number will jump up pretty significantly in 24.
well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be a good year for nice from a financial perspective, so.
Administrative services. Oh, did anybody have questions? Karen.
All right, administrative services. So ultimately, I'm responsible for the financial statements and the budget preparation and to make sure the property taxes are done in a timely manner. And with the financial statements, you have some main transactional cycles of a business, like our purchasing, our payroll, and our revenue processes. So I'd like to give a shout out to the employees that went through a tough transition this year. Everyone, all the vendors still got paid, and all the employees still got paid, and all the tax receipts and utility payments still got received. So I think it was a good accomplishment considering my position was vacant for a long time. And like I mentioned, today was the first day in which the village has been fully staffed. So with those cycles too, I'm ultimately responsible for the internal control that takes place in those cycles, and I feel good about the employees that we got and the direction we're going. And I should mention also with the property taxes that we have for of the 18 municipalities in Milwaukee County, we are one of 6 right now that are going live with property tax software. Milwaukee County had a new contract and they kind of rolled this out this year. And so we have switched from GCS to LandNav. It has been rocky at times. As Wanda saw at the meeting a couple weeks ago, it was a very angry meeting.
That's not me.
So some of the things I feel we can look to improve on are, I would like to get a better online payment system established where, especially like with our utility payments, where we can try and get our residents, like ultimately, let's get more people getting paperless statements. Let's get more people paying either online or signing up for automatic ACH. So I think there's different services out there that would better facilitate those goals. I think there's more we can do. Like Karen mentioned, there's licensing modules in BSNA. We have a specific module that allows us to do live payments, like if you pay or utility bill, it live records it in our software. We have a cloud-based browser aspect that we're not using, where someone could approve an invoice while they're out of the office. There's an HR module, so I feel like we have a training tool in a couple weeks where we can just better cross-train our people. Like right now, we have Yvette, our senior accountant, she's the last several payroll cycles, she's been doing payroll with OSHA, payroll and chart. So those are some of the goals, to just get a better cross-train, better utilize our current financial software, get a better online payment service that allows the residents to have a better, just a better overall experience with paying their utility and other things.
Well, you know, I think too, with the new marketing and communication marketing person, might be a good opportunity to use, if we can, Grounded Magazine to let people know they have these options available. So we got a lot of new people moving in. They get the bill in the mail, and it does have on there, you can do online, but if we had somewhere that says you can do all, you know, you can do all of this,
Exactly.
but then it has to be available.
So some of the best practice, I think it's important to go for proposal, and not just always stick with what you know. I think would be a good idea. We've had US Bank for a long time. I think it would be a good idea to do a proposal for banking services. We pay very little money, but just like there's other things with what we've done where we now have no really true full-time admin assistants. We could be doing like a lockbox service or things like that, where we're doing less receiving in the office. And the other one I thought would be a good idea is we've used Bears, our financial advisors, for a long time. And we have nothing against somebody doing a good job, but just go out and do a proposal and see what else is out there for that too. So banking services, financial advisors. I think we have another year after this year of our assessor. That's something eventually we'll probably want to do. And we expect those costs to remain the same throughout the remainder of that contract.
Just a preview on the assessor contract. Some municipalities don't assess every year. I would never go beyond every other year, but there could be some cost savings if you were to go every other year. So that would be something that when we get to this time next year, kind of show you what that potential savings is. And just the, from a policy perspective, that's something you would want to change or not. So,
Yeah. Okay. Any questions?
It's always good to shop. I mean,
Right.
every 2 or 3 years, it's always good to say, to see what's out there. It's not that you're not satisfied with your current provider. It's like someone could offer you something much better for, just a small fraction.
Were you done here?
I was done, yes.
Okay.
For Village Hall, other than general government, the main thing is, as we already hit on, the custodian is no longer there. So a lot of the wages in that shifts to cleaning services. We have met with, I'm jumping ahead, your major accomplishments. Also met with CIVMIC multiple times to discuss workers' comp and liability insurance, met with Hometown Publishing a bunch of times. We'll continue to meet with them. That's probably another RFP that will be done next year on the Brown Deer magazine. Performed an audit on phone services, what's on the village plan, and disconnected any unused phones that were on the plan. We executed the RFP for the IT technological services.
Can I go back to the phone?
Yes.
Disconnected unused phones?
Yes.
Were we paying for phones that we were?
Yes.
How many?
Yeah.
How many?
I would have to pull that up, but it was a few. I know in the health department, you had a few.
Yeah, I
And
think
the
it was
police-
turnover of the
Yeah. And so, we had a bunch of transition, with the health department. So that's kind of the nice thing with the clean lens. You see these stuff and it's like,
That's probably
what's
something that
this?
should be done in an accident.
What's this for? So Chief, see, now Chief walked out right when I was gonna give him a compliment. So he's like, I'm gonna take on phones. When we had the transition, it used to be in the administrative services, department. So he took on phones and he was the one that really helped perform that audit. And then I know Becky, when you came on, you helped from the health department. So yeah, there was quite a few phones that we were able to disconnect from that plan.
Not to cut you off.
No, it's something we want to highlight. So, yep.
Regarding hometown publishing, have you figured out why their accounts are off and half the community is not getting the magazine?
So there was two different reasons. The first time they kind of said it was on them as far as they weren't. So when you requested in different zip codes and areas with the postal service, and I don't think they were requesting the right one. But the last time they said they requested the right one, it still wasn't. So I've asked them to let's set up a meeting with them and the postal service to identify what the issue is. And so we will be meeting before the next issue goes out to make sure that's rectified. So, so they're saying this time around it is on the postal service.
So we're going to go out for service this year.
For property next year. Next year. So we'll be doing it sometime in the middle of next year. I want to get the marketing communications coordinator kind of up to speed for a little bit. So I would imagine, because right now your major, what you do on an advertising end, you do now. So, because you're trying to get people who are willing to advertise in all three issues. So the summer is the best time to do it. And I didn't have a marketing communications coordinator at the time. So now that we have someone on staff, next summer is when we will do the RFP for the Boundary magazine. And so you're going to see a different service product or similar if they win the RFP, or it would be for 24.
So before that happens, we'll have about 2 issues.
3 publications.
So we're having another 3 before you go.
It would be 2, if I could get really specific, 2 before we go out to bid, but there would be like a 3rd one that they would still under contract need to publish. So if we were to change, there would be 3 publications before you would see a new publication.
So those still do the next summer program.
Correct.
So we're the lead on the contract. The
Correct.
School is joins us.
This will be in the next joint board meeting too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We talked about these, we saw a slight reduction in the North Star Health contribution, IT maintenance, that transition, and then the transition for cleaning. So those were the 3 major changes in this department. Be happy to answer any questions. See you. Chief, are you all set?
Yeah. So many of you know, we had quite the turnover in the last year. We had 10 employees that have either moved on, resigned, or were terminated over the course of the year. We have now hired back 9 of those employees. 7 of them are currently fully trained and on the road currently. We have 2 that are in the academy, and we're looking to recruit 1 final position. And so the focus for this year for me was to, unfortunately, kind of have to overhaul the department a little bit. Not getting into the details, but there were just things that needed to be done and to be corrected. And I can't be happier with the staff that we have now. I'm so proud of everybody that put the effort in, worked the extra hours over the course of the last year. It was a struggle at times. Some of the incidents that we were involved in, and we were doing that with limited staff. And I'm just very proud of them for all stepping up and doing what they had to do. So I feel very good about where we're at. I feel very good about the staff. And they're very good people in general that I'm very confident on a daily basis that they're doing the right things. And as you know, in law enforcement, one bad apple can root a department. And I think we don't have that anymore. So I'm very proud of that. And that's been my main focus over the course of this past year. The police department remodel was awarded, I think in 2021, it got postponed. We'll be completing that this year. It doesn't entail much. I think it's $35,000, but some stuff like Protective Bureau and some other items, cameras and some security systems downstairs. So that will be completed by the end of the year. And then, while unfortunate with some of the significant events that we've had a very high success rate as far as arrests or closing up those cases. The one case that has not been closed out was the most recent one. We're working on that. We do have known suspects that we're looking for, and we're confident that we'll bring resolution to that case as well. Overall, moving forward, the other thing I would mention is the flock camera system that we've implemented. It's been very useful and very helpful in solving cases. I mentioned a couple of those along during the CIP project, so I won't repeat those, but it's been very helpful. As you know, we're going to be adding more cameras, and that will assist us as we move forward. And then moving into, now that we're fully staffed, we're going to be looking at more of a crime reduction plan and looking at a neighborhood task force that will not only look at criminal behavior, but such things as code compliance, loud music, excessive speed, driving concerns, traffic crash locations that are seeing an increase. And so we're building a team around that will specifically deal with those issues. And we'll have somebody leading that, and then we'll be pulling staff as available to assist in those areas. So it will be fully comprehensive. Certainly, we want to look at some of the drug issues that may be occurring and make sure that we're on top of that, but that's not going to be limited to just that. So those are some things we're moving forward, and hopefully we'll see some results in the years to come with some crime reduction and some of those things. Take any questions, yes, sir. So have you seen an uptick in calls to Walmart incidents? So the challenge right now with Walmart is the management. They had a manager for a while, then he left. They got a new one, then he left, and now they have a new one. And so while we try to start making traction in things that need to be taken care of, such as some of the noise issues we've had, some of the just garbage issues, and some just general cleanliness, we have to start over each time a new manager comes. And so we're meeting with the new manager actually this week or next. That being said, the calls for service, I mean, it's a retail business, it's a big business. And so those kind of flow with whether or not they have a loss prevention working. And so our main calls for service there are theft related. We've tried to work with them on some of those. The issue there is Walmart, along with many other major stores, are seeing the self-service as the future. And so, as you know, with self-service tends to bring opportunity to maybe not scan an item or scan a lesser item and take a more expensive one. And so those are some of the challenges. We're working with them to try to beef up their staff in that area to try to monitor and deter. As far as any general other crimes, we're not seeing a major uptick in any other type of crime, just basically retail theft. Yes, sir.
Is your department impacted by the gun concerns that the city of Milwaukee police have? Or do you have any?
Gun concerns is
The one gun that keeps going off at the police?
interesting to bring that up. So yes, we do have those. we are in discussions with only our firearms instructors, but some members of the city of Milwaukee that are dealing with that. And that might be an item that you see coming in front of you in the near future. The good thing that we have found that is if we do make a change, it's going to be relatively inexpensive. The trade-in value for the firearm that we have now versus the cost of the new firearm is only, don't quote me, but roughly around $120 times 35, it's under $4,000. Well, not something that we necessarily want to pay, but I think if we determine that it's the right course of action, it's fairly inexpensive to make sure that we don't have any issues.
And Chief, I had asked a question earlier, I don't know if you had a chance to ask him about the numbers.
Yep.
You know, staffing. Because it,
Yes, I looked at that with Tyler. I pulled those numbers from the last report, so they must have been inaccurate there. But the difference in the number is the community service officer. So I actually brought copies of for everybody so that they all can talk on the same.
so do you have a total of 34 or 35?
34.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is just an updated one from that's in your packet. And the difference, you'll see in 2019 and 2020, there were 35. The reduction of one is simply the community service officer, which was a non-sworn position. So we didn't lose any police officers. And from what I understand, it was kind of a position that was being filled periodically and needed help out with code compliance. So that was a position that, that was reduced.
And you moved it up to sergeant.
The officer, correct, we see the 17 or the 18 or 17 that went to a sergeant position. But again, understand that our sergeants are on the road as well. So there's no reduction as far as officers on the street.
When you start looking at numbers, like,
Right, yes, I saw that after the fact. Sorry about that.
Do you have a community service officer at school?
Yes, we do. And I just want to attest to, we had an incident recently at the school. While it ended up being a hoax, but the school district was so great to work with. We have such a good relationship. And I'm so very thankful for our resource officer. They really like him. He's done a great job. I've always said you need the right person in those positions, especially in a school setting. And he's done a good job, and they like him as well. Certainly, if there was ever an issue, we would look at switching somebody out. But our relationship is really strong with the school, and they've really, we've met with them multiple times over the summer to talk about active shooter and other incidents that might occur at the school, and they've been great to work with. So I'm very thankful for the cooperation. And then that was everything that we kind of talked about in the summer came into play either last week or the week before, and it really went well. So.
it would be nice to have something put out so that residents know, because that day, I was getting calls, people were posting information, and it was all attacked in school.
Yeah.
And you're saying you work well with it.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know that's gonna happen, but it's good if people can see that they were not operating at all, the police were there, you worked together, and you had done it before the incident happened. So,
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to control. We did do a briefing with the parents that did show up to let them know the status of what we're doing. And the school district did put out a press release afterwards. And I tried to leave it up to them due to the fact that it was their school, and so I didn't want to interfere with that, but.
you never know. So we'd be proactive.
Yes.
To just talk about, we work together,
I agree.
and that may be something Tyler, we can have on next agenda. Just say that.
For a joint report.
Did you mention that you had one position of really utilize this code enforcement?
And you eliminated that, but no, we need that.
So that position was eliminated, I believe, in 2020. And so I think we've talked about how to implement that. Next year, Nancy Hoppy, who is currently the executive secretary, we've talked about reorganizing the department. And a part of that reorganization would be a code compliance officer. And so we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but we have at least a plan in place that I think would work and keep the budget neutral.
Other questions of the chief? We should have the anniversary, maybe a year.
Yes, thank you.
Over a year. Sentence.
September 1st.
Fire emergency government, these are out of our control. We already talked about that. So just to reiterate, fire contribution is 4.7%. Projected fire dues distribution of 4,000 from last year. Bayside dispatch services increased about 3%. Both dispatch and North Shore Health are overall contributions for all 7 municipalities were right around 3%. So that would increase for us. We were just getting informed that that's the contribution increase. So there you go. Any questions? Seeing none, moving to public works, Matthew.
So Public Works in 2022 are large accomplishments where we continued the in-house grass mowing operation. This was our second summer where we had that situation, and I think it worked again fabulously. What we ended up doing is we pulled 2 guys on grass mowing out of the labor driver pool and then backfilled the rest of the work through summer help. And so we had 4 summer helpers that were just fantastic this year. One of them was Chief Nimmer's son, who did fabulous out there. We would beat him up too hard, but he was getting some basketball on. So they had a great group of kids, a couple Brown Deer residents, like I said, the chief's son, and then another boy from Menominee Falls. We're hopeful all 4 of them will come back next year, and they did great together. So that part, it's kind of a high visible thing that we end up providing, grass mowing, keeping things looking nice. So I think we kind of got dialed in as the year went on, and we'll continue that into next year. So far, so good. One of our largest budget items in the general fund is our road salt purchase. And so we are always very cognizant on how much material we are putting down and how we're handling events. That's the other high profile thing that Public Works provides. It's usually the refuse collection, your summer landscaping, and then snow plowing. And so we're kind of all eyes are on us during the snow events. And we handle it correctly. Salt is expensive. It's about $70 a ton. We use almost 1,000 tons a year. And so we're able to reduce that salt. It's not only environmentally friendly, but it saves us money. And so I think we're in a good spot on how we handled last year. We have a full dome where normally there's some years we would have to purchase salt ahead of time before the season starts. We don't have to do that. Now, on the other hand, we are kind of, at the whim of Mother Nature, and so we have to react to what is thrown at us. But still, how you handle events can greatly, significantly impact your project. The other big project that's going on is obviously West Brown Deer Road and North Green Bay Road streetscaping and reconstruction. So far, so good. Everything is still at this point on schedule. They are supposed to, by late fall, have Green Bay Road open in both the north and southbound direction. The project's not going to be done, but everything will be able to travel north and southbound freely. Signals will be in place, saying Brown Deer Road east and westbound. The overall completion for that project is June of 2023, but that's a lot of the ancillary off-street.
So will the roundabout be?
The roundabout should be functional by then as well. So there's still a lot of work to do over the next 2.5 months.
So what will be missing or the winter curbing,
Yeah, there'll be a,
landscaping?
yes, exactly. All the stuff kind of off roadway. I'm sure there still will be some paving, we'll have to do like the roundabout, maybe we'll have a single lane through and won't have any both lanes through. But they'll still be able to at least travel in both directions.
Landscaping will be done in the spring.
Correct, landscaping, yet none of that will occur at all this year. That will be May of 2023. Then we kind of have just one of our routine things, our normal equipment purchases. It's been really challenging, and Matt Striner, our mechanic, has been excellent. So we're dealing with this in this economy of vehicles and getting them and how delayed everything really is. We're still waiting on stuff that we had approval from last year. We still don't have our plow truck. We just delays, markups. It's a very crazy time. And so Matt is constantly coming up with different options on how we can get trucks in and usable. So he's been excellent to work with, and we'll have some more challenges that actually at Finance and Public Works will be talking about trucks again, just how delayed and expensive things are. And then the library parking lot reconstruction, that's been going great so far. That's getting the project fully funded through MSD, and that will be done by the end of this month. That's 2022 in a nutshell, and then looking forward at 2023. Our proposed budget, generally 3% increase across the board. So there's 13 of us over there, including myself. We do have 2 younger labor drivers, and the rest of them are, I'll call our senior labor drivers. They've all like topped out at their salary, so they're just going to get the COLA increases. Well, these younger guys obviously eventually need to catch them as they get more experience. And so they're both fabulous. Jonathan Flacco, he recently just got his CDL, and so he's getting a 15% increase. And then we have another younger guy still working towards that, Johnny Pearson, and he's going to get a 10% increase. They're both extremely excellent workers, and we're very happy to have them, and we want to keep them so they don't get stolen by another community or try to go to maybe to the private contractor side. So we want to take care of them, and we're doing excellent. So very, very deserved for their increase. We continue obviously our road salt monitoring, and then we have 2 big designs coming up. We have a design and coordinate with the city of Mequon for a county line road project, and that's from like Spanky's or the railroad tracks east to Green Bay Road. We did also submit for grant funding. I have to follow up with the state. They have some further questions on our grant application, and so we may get a bunch of free money from the state to build a county line road.
Do we have to do it in collaboration with Mequon?
It is in collaboration with Mequon. Yep. And so we've been talking with their staff and our proposal process and getting an engineer involved. And then our design and coordinating with the city of Milwaukee, that's still hanging out there on Bradley Road. And so we're hopeful to move forward on that. And I am looking at submitting for grant funding for that box culvert underneath Bradley Road, which is the village of Brown Deer's responsibility to repair that box culvert.
Where is that?
That's so at the very east end of Bradley Road, right before you hit Green Bay Road, there's a box culvert underneath the street. You probably won't even notice it's very wooded all around there, and there's just a small stream that filters through there and goes to South Branch Creek. And then just our normal road repaving program. The main area is going to be Meadowside subdivision. We have a coordinated project with the water utility down in Goodrich and Tower. We're going to use some MMSD, PPI money to replace sewer laterals out there, continue our grass mowing operations, equipment purchases, and reduce the CIP sewer line. It's 2023.
Matthew, do you just want to, before, if I may, just talk real quick, because your department's kind of divided into 6 or so different divisions or so. So you just want to talk about how that allocation works?
Correct. So in the general fund, we have 6 different divisions. There's streets and traffic, admin, forestry, winter ops, We have municipal complex, that's mainly Mastron, or mechanic. And then, let me see, refuse collection. And so the refuse collection division, that's almost 100%, $400,000 of that is advanced disposal or GFL now, and that's a contracted service. That contract runs through 2025 with them, and then go up to bid again. Winter and forestry, those are generally handled in the winter months. And so, if the guys are snow plowing, if there's a huge season where it's snowing every day and they're all doing that, forestry will likely go under and then your winter ops will go up. But usually there's a pretty good balance there. So if they're not snow plowing, they're doing tree trimming or tree removals. Streets and traffic, that's a summer division. And so that's like where grass mowing operations comes out of, like street repairs. And then administration, that's for any other, when we're helping other departments in the village. So library, police, park and rec, their time board administration, and then also all their vacation or sick time, Erica's time, desk, employee administration. So they're all split, and at the end of each day, the guys on the back of their time sheet, they'll fill out what they're working on, and so then that gets assigned to the division, and we budget based off of historical data. So I usually go back and look 3-4 years and say, okay, historically, here's 10% of their times in the streets of traffic, et cetera. And a budget like that. We also look forward and can see if there's any big project that we have or big tree removal thing that we know is coming up. We'll play with those allocations.
I have sort of a two-part question. The first one is dealing with leaves. I know in some cities and villages, there's leaf collection. And this one, when I first moved here, I had 500 bags of leaves I need to. Space left. Is that something that have never been considered within the village?
So that
You start now.
Yeah. Exactly. So this comes up a lot. I would say every couple of years, this will come up. So right now, no, we do not provide that service. Can we provide that service? Yes. That would have a direct impact to our levy, and a significant one where you probably almost have to maybe go to referendum or cut something else.
Yeah, so my goal, where we're gonna work on for 2023 community survey. So the first part of the community survey will talk about how do you feel about services? It will be benchmarking for the village. Every 2 or so years, we'll see where perceptions are. Second half of the survey is about these service delivery kind of referendum type questions. And this is a perfect example, which I want to put on there, where we let the community know if you want to go to the service, it will cost this much approximately on a $200,000 home. Knowing this, would you be supportive or not? And that's where we're going to get feedback. And then depending on that feedback, we would ask, well, before the budget, how you as a board feels. And that's, if you're supportive, that's where we would start putting the work to prepare for that service. So I'm hoping that through the community survey that we can use that as a facilitator in the discussion later in 23 on that type of service.
What you're trying to do in a leaf collection scenario is you're going to try to get to the village once every single week. So your house, you would go past once a week during the fall. You have to buy equipment to be able to suck up all of the leaves. There's a couple different ways you can collect leaves, but that's one. And a piece of that equipment's about $300,000. So you probably have to buy 2 so you can get through the village that fast, and then maybe add some staff, so people to operate that. So that's where the budget impact comes in.
On streets that don't have curbs.
Yeah, we would collect them everywhere. So like Fox Point, they have a collection. They have people just wriggle up to the edge of the street.
Yeah.
Every street would get collected.
But there are areas that you can't get trucks in. That one off of Gunner's Lane that goes off 52nd. It goes up a narrow street. I don't even think the garbage trucks go.
They can come on each court.
But it's not, it's a, I have to.
I know what you're talking about, yeah, I know that, yeah.
It's a narrow, it's not more report, it's off of the county line. You
Oh, that's
go-
private. That's a private street.
Right,
Yes.
but you don't use,
No.
They would have, yeah, they would be, they would have. they
so how
would
is
use-
that, is that similar as, Warwick,
Warwick, yeah.
but they're not under the same guidelines that Warwick is?
Because it's all one property. It's a private driveway, actually.
Correct.
So all those houses back there are one property?
They
They're multiple houses.
They used to be under one property owner. That owner has since sold off the properties
To different,
to different ownership, but there was no plat agreement like there was with Warwick Court, where everyone that was a part of that subdivision, essentially got a deed restriction that said you are responsible for this, and it is a private road. In this case, it was just a private owner that had all of these houses on what was at one time one parcel, and they've simply kind of carved it up and sold off those
yeah, so
houses.
that, those are some of the people that asked me about the lease collection.
Yeah, we don't plow that or
Right.
anything. We
And you don't
touch-
do the garbage, I think they bring it out.
They have to bring it up to the street.
And it's not even really a surface road.
No, I know,
It's a gravel driveway.
I learned that.
Yeah.
Just trying to find an address. The other, there are places in the village too that, when we talk about leaf collection, that are, like the school has a property, Algonquin, the old Algonquin. They don't regulate. All those leaves blow across the street to guess who? Oh. Right, because it's an open space.
Yeah. I mean, they should be taking care of that, like just their grass mowing operation, like they should be mulching those leaves up. I'm not sure if that's happening then. Okay.
Yeah.
Because we can talk to them. I mean, that should kind of solve itself by just them cutting grass in the fall. And their mower should have a mulcher on it, because all farms do.
I will check.
Okay, I can check with Jody on that, because yeah, she would know. And
I know
she
you
should
had
know.
a call about,
Okay.
branches that have come down, and they don't come again, but anyway.
No, I can follow up with her on that.
So just some understanding this. People would have, if we had that device and staff to do it, people would still have to break these leaves to get to the property.
Yeah, to the street.
So somebody's got a half acre, like,
Got a break, they got a break them in. They just have to drink this spot.
that's more efficient. It's easier. Almost.
Well, so yeah, so yeah, broadly speaking, and this comes up to, is that even in the city of Milwaukee or something, I am telling you, I haven't touched a rake in 20 years. Like, just take your mower, have a mulching attachment on it, and just mulch them up. And I have maples everywhere, and that some people know they have tons of them, you know, if you're like all over by Amos. That might be a little hard, your grass might look at these things later. So that's a little different, but overall, for I'd say most of the properties around here, when I see people raking, I'm like, you're crazy. Just get your lawnmower and mow your grass.
Get it up. I got you.
Or you or
The other question I had was related to the salt. Are you using any other chemicals or something?
We do, so we do pre-wet the salt with a calcium chloride, but that is, we try not to use a lot of it because it's, you know, it's a little harsher. Yes, it's a pretty harsh chemical, but it's very cheap. It's extremely cheap. It's 60 cents a gallon or something. So
I know Linville, they use a lot of that spraying their streets before they use salt sometimes.
So there's that's still open for debate on if that's effective or not. That takes a ton of staff time ahead of it, and I haven't seen it worthwhile. You're still putting a lot of material down, and you have to have a lot of staff time ahead, you know, prepping the streets, pre-treating them. And they are always out salting at the same time. So it's not, I'm not seeing a big advantage. So far, we have not done that yet.
All right. Let's go. Ready to go. Community services.
All right, so the 2022 accomplishments, we modified some zoning this year, creating a couple of new park spaces, changed zoning for the Starbucks, and then we worked on ordinance changes for noise, community living arrangements, and so on. We're estimating 773 building permits this year with a revenue of about 77,000. That is on the lower end of kind of our historical, or I should say our moving average over the last 5 years. We've been anywhere between 700 and 1,000 permits on a given year. Our revenue total is down, but our revenue total is very beholden to having one big project or a couple of larger projects. A project like Green Link or the Bevy, that alone can account for $50,000 perhaps in permits with a mix of building, electrical, plumbing, and HVAC. So this was a down year that we did not see any major development permit revenue. We're hopeful for next year, and that kind of gets into, working preliminarily on tax incremental district number 5, but not really going too far and getting that established, holding that in the back pocket. We worked with Bringa and Kapoor to advance the 10-mile park design and submitted the appropriations grant that we're still crossing our fingers for from the federal budget. And of course, we began the update of our comprehensive plan with AECom. And that leads into what we anticipate for 2023, which is a completion of the comprehensive plan. We think that we can wrap that up mostly by the end of this year and circle back in the early part of 2023 with an opportunity for feedback, some final feedback through the Plan Commission and the village board before we look to adopt that and ratify that as our new land use direction. We obviously want to work with the new marketing and communications coordinator to expand our economic development efforts through a mix of direct outreach, social media, and providing kind of one-on-one opportunities for developers to come visit Brown Deer. We've started doing that just this last month, where we're looking to reach out to specific individuals within the development community and bring them through Brown Deer on the driving tour, showing them all of the sites that we have. So that is kind of what we're looking to do in 2023. And then I would tell you that right now, our estimation for our Safe Build contract does suggest that we envision cost savings with that contracted service. Again, a lot of that depends because they get 85% of all of our permit revenue. So if we do have a big project, let's say another major residential or commercial developments gets permitted, we're talking about a significant bump in permit revenue, of which a lot of that goes to Safe Build. And I would tell you that the building inspector as a staff position was approximately, after wages and benefits, was about $120,000. And so if you look back at the 77,000 we've taken in revenue, we're doing really well in terms of what we're paying Safe Build only 85% of that. So there's a savings there. But if we get that big project, we may be behind. So just something to keep in mind. We don't know of any projects that are on the immediate horizon, but there are some things that we've talked about that are in the works, so it's possible. Can I answer any questions?
Nate, can you talk about this vacant property registration ordinance?
Sure. So we have I should back up. About 5 years ago, there was some significant concern from the village board about this proliferation of foreclosures in the community, who and how they were being managed. It kind of dovetails with a lot of the code enforcement issues. You have long grass, you have people trying to board up windows. Sometimes in the middle of winter, the water wouldn't be shut off, and you'd have freezing issues and flooding issues. And so we instituted a program where we tried to track that better. And that was this vacant property registration ordinance. We saw examples of it in other communities. And I will tell you, we struggled a bit in that we were still challenged with figuring out what bank had the loan and then who that loan may have gotten transferred to or who was servicing it for the bank. And we entered into an arrangement, a contract with a company called Comac Solutions about 3 years ago for them to undertake the registration. And they would take a portion, they would take 50% of the registration fees for their services. And they sold their services as being better at tracking these foreclosures. What we saw was an uptick in registrations, but not a significant one. And earlier this year, they disappeared. They literally no longer responded to registration or registrants. They did not respond to us. We sent them certified communication stating that they're in breach of their contract. No response. And working with Attorney Bayer, we said, all right, your failure to respond is resulting in the contract being null and void. So now that vacant property registration is back in house, I would tell you that we are reactive in that process. So it's on the books. There are the mortgage lenders out there that are, I would tell you, responsible and I think savvy and are used to these ordinances. They reach out to us and they register. That's probably still only about 50% of the vacant properties. If we find, if somebody recommends or suggests or calls in and complains about one, we try to track that down and follow up. But again, that's just that reactive, whereas Comac was being proactive. Their success maybe probably 25% better than what we were doing, but they ghosted us, which was very strange. Never had that happen.
Would it be helpful to have some kind of online registration for a vacant property, like through the website or something?
Sure,
You know,
it'd
like
be
a
a
report
BSNA,
problem,
yeah.
but it would be a vacant house.
Well, I think that goes to kind of the discussion with BSNA and what some of those tools are. I think that wouldn't hurt to make it easier, and we could definitely communicate that message out, to the various loan providers and servicers of vacant property.
And we also ask the neighbors, people know when neighbors are coming. So, I mean, if it was online, you have to,
Yeah.
suspect the property is vacant, that would be a fourth of the work being notified, and the other third, the report would be,
But sometimes too, and I don't know this to be true all the time, but sometimes the people that may be gone for the winter.
There's that element, and there's one other element that you might not realize, but what happens is the foreclosure process and even the Liz penance process is long.
yes.
And so there's a significant period when there could be a homeowner and it's titled to that person or family, but they've left.
Yeah.
And so you have no one to chase because Mr. and Mrs. Smith just are gone and they don't care. But the bank, they still have to give them a time to go through the process, and that can take 6 months, 9 months, and we can't go to the bank and say, hey, go fix that yet. And so no one's registering.
Other questions?
How heavy are your fines related to vacant properties?
So really, the registration is $250. The goal here is not to make money. The goal here is to get a point of contact and a responsible party so that we can reach out to them if there are issues. If the neighbor's calling and saying, hey, the grass is long, boom, we can send a message and somebody's going to do something. So where the fines come into play for other violations that might be there, that is really determined by the judge on a municipal citation. It starts at $300 and can go anywhere up. We have somebody that's had junk vehicles in his yard for a couple of years that the judge continues to work with him on. And again, keep in mind, a lot of this is at the discretion of the judge as well to impose penalties and impose the fine. But I believe he's up to, he's in the tens of thousands of dollars in fines. Mr. Wagner, he has 2 properties, and one on Rocker Road, yes.
So situations like that, there's just a hand just tied to the court side.
Yes, it can be. What we strive for on code compliance really is to not go the citation route. We really want to try to work with somebody to get them to solve the issue, because that's what gets everybody upset. That's the visible problem. We want to get that fixed. As soon as you issue a citation, you have to go through the court process. That takes a couple months. And then there's that discretion of the judge that could say, oh, you can have some more time. And you can have some more time. And I'll only fine you $500. Well, that might not be enough to get them to move. And so we have this junkyard that's kind of perpetuated for 3 years now, as an example. But that, I would tell you, is only probably about 5% of our compliance issues. And with the police department kind of having led those efforts recently, we found that compliance is even greater when you have an officer show up and knock on the door with a badge on. Does more than me usually, just saying, either. Just
All right, other questions? Thank you.
So the Park and Recreation will be moved to the 17th. I gave Danny the option of the 17th because she has several special revenue funds we'll be presenting. So all we have left is, I think, is municipal court and then the health department. So court, we highlighted that where we moved it to general fund. We're projecting, if you just want to move on to the next one, Karen, I'm not going to go through their accomplishments, but transition to the special revenue or to the general fund. They used to have an assistant court clerk that was part-time shared with Shorewood. That person left earlier this year. Talking with the courts, they no longer needed that individual. They were trying to get caught up on some of they had like a huge backlog on process cases. So I think they were caught up on that. So there's no longer the need for that. So there was some expense savings. We used to have an administration services fee when it was a special revenue fund. So now that it's back in the general fund, we no longer need to do that. So that revenue is no longer available. But as Derek mentioned in his presentation, the additional revenue that we're getting from the court far exceeds that administrative fee. And then we're projecting court fine and citation revenue to be flat for this year, or for 23 compared to 22. We'll have to see. I mean, Chief could probably speak to a little bit with road construction. There might be a little less traffic. So with next year, a little more traffic, there actually may be a little more action.
More speeding on the road.
I don't know, right? But for now, we're just projecting fine and citation revenue to be flat. And then if it comes in higher, then it comes in higher. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just.
You want to speak to that at all?
Certainly this year was lower due to the staffing. I would presume that we will see an increase in that next year, but just based on being at full staff. But
That'd be
possible.
Yeah.
Thanks, Becky. So, well, Becky needs a mic for recording.
So for Becky's department, if you're in your tablet, you want to skip ahead a little bit. We're having Becky go tonight because
It's my daughter's birthday.
Yeah, and we want you to be there for your daughter's birthday,
Great.
so.
On Sunday. Do you want to kind of move by a parent?
Yeah.
All right, little bastard. Okay, so health department accomplishments, I can't obviously take very much credit, I just saw some of my 6 months. But first and foremost, continue the COVID case management and vaccine clinics. We currently have limited term employees doing our calls to COVID positive patients in the North Shore. They call everyone who is under 12 and over 70, and I meet with them twice a week and continually ask if this is effective and still useful, and still lots of positive feedback. Some of the isolation guidelines, especially for school age kiddos, is really complicated, so they are wonderfully autonomous, which is great. The staff attended routine meetings with state, local health officials and school representatives, specifically superintendents, which made for shared epidemiological surveillance efforts, and we were able to be transparent about, I know we post that data on our website, our social media on an ongoing basis, and right now, my team of public health strategists are young folk, and so they're really taking advantage of a lot of new software like Qualtrics, and very active on social media, and use all sorts of cool tools that were not in any of my former roles, which is cool. So as a result of that, we built really strong rapport with our superintendents in North Shore, as well as just all the schools. I think it played out with the River Place fire, right? We were able to move things really quickly and to respond. And it's a great use of our funding. We have ELC funding, which is for epi and lab capacity, and it's like the heart of the work is this work. So it's having folks reach out and connect and build rapport. So that's great. We still hold several clinics a month. We are still particularly targeting Brown Deer and Glendale, where there's just very slightly lower vaccine rates. We're still 7 of the top 10 in the region, which is great, all the North Shore municipalities. We are currently providing the bivalent COVID vaccine and flu vaccines. We had 6 clinics this week. We had 7 in the month of September, and we have 17 more planned for October. The emergency use agreement for the bivalent COVID vaccine for children 5 to 11 is expected on Monday, so we're also planning for that. So it's super busy right now, and the staff is being really creative on how to get everyone served and through the door and be efficient and also bill, because we're able to reimburse or get reimbursed from Medicaid and insurance for a number of these services. We mindfully used our COVID-related funding first to maintain our operations, but then also really work towards recovery work. So again, those LTE staff are really, they continue to be autonomous and really run clinics, but what's so awesome about that is that allows for the public health core team to do the work, right? We've been so sort of distracted, I guess, by COVID for so long that, some of we take our eye off the ball for too long. I think it's an issue everywhere, right? Like if people didn't get refuse picked up, or no speeding tickets happen, that something bubbles up in the back. We had 3 long-term interns in 2021-22, and 2 of those folks applied and interviewed and were hired for permanent positions, which is awesome for workforce development. It's really the heart of that work. We're currently soliciting for public health interns, and I have a strategist working diligently on that project to just reacquaint ourselves with the schools. All of those internships sort of kind of stalled out for 2021. I had those couple core folks that I inherited, but then that was it. We haven't had anyone since. So glad to rekindle those things. This presentation says we had 2 full-time positions open, but one of them is brand new, and we hired for that one. So there's currently 1 vacancy, and we're still doing interviews. And then we had 800 respondents on our most recent CHA was what the goal I reported, but I checked today, we had over 958 long format key informant interviews. The last community health assessment, there was only 192 respondents. So that's really sad. I would like to rep 69,000 folks. Not a lot of those is represented there. So they did really good work this year. And then just lastly, to highlight that our core preventative services are back up and running. And things are going well. So, all right, major budget highlights, nothing crazy. We had a 3% increase across the board that we, for those of you guys who don't know, it's based on the collective bargaining average of the 7 North Shore municipalities plus 1. So we could have asked for 3.6, but we were able to come in at 3% and kind of, you know, it was copacetic in a way. Clinic fees remain somewhat unpredictable, but it's still pretty lucrative. We're just still trying to get a feel for how much we can recoup in clinic activities. It's somewhat unknown because we don't know what we'll be vaccinating for. We don't know that there's another bivalent booster or et cetera, monkeypox, things like that, right? You can charge for administration, get a little chunk of money for every interaction. So it's a little hard to target and remains unknown, but still something that's relatively lucrative. We were really conscientious about budgeting grant dollars before anything that was based in tax levy or tax municipal contributions. So we tucked lots of routine expenses into grant budgets, like all our office supplies and lots of our, because that's good stewardship. We've earmarked our ARPA funding, which, if you don't know, it's $626,500 to try to build space with North Shore Fire and Rescue, where the project is currently accepting bids. We increased admin charges, and so what that means is that we're a little more mindful in our approach with those grants. Many grants are allow for up to 10% admin charge, which really supports the operations for things that aren't grant activities, right, like our rent. So we've tapped out the grants in that way, just making good use of those dollars. We're being conscientious about our remaining COVID dollars that are allocated to program expenses to maintain flexibility. It's a really broad category. It's kind of planning for the unknown. We've learned that we need to expect the unexpected, like the bivalent COVID vaccine that we've been giving for 3 weeks is a perfect illustration of that. We need staff time and billing time, and there's a lot of things that kind of fall into that pivot. So another round of boosters, here we go. And then lastly, you know, I am a grant writer, and I fully intend to continue to write grants that are connected to the mission of our work and feasible to achieve. So I think that's also a big component of, you know, my work in general, but for sure in the 2023 budget. Any questions for me?
And now, we're all gonna stay out.
Yeah, hope you guys all got boosted. Come see us.
That's round 1, so we'll keep round 2 on the 17th, and if there's any questions in the interim, encourage, if you want to, feel free to give me a call or email. I'm happy to address those in between meetings.
And those of you who have not had the pleasure of participating in our budget meetings before, we have long meetings like this, and then we have maybe 2 or 3 different outside of the board meeting. So, with that, can we entertain a motion to adjourn? So moved, and it is 51.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great, enjoy this week. Beautiful.
So the cold one.
There's a staffing card.
Yeah, Diane.
Yeah, it's on the.
Oh, yeah.
I only saw that, I always have to, I have. I think you're right.
I didn't have anything right.
Oh, there is one.
All right.